I still remember the exact moment everything changed. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon, the kind where the world feels slow and safe. I was sitting in my room, scrolling through emails, when my phone buzzed with a call from my uncle. He's always been the fun one in the family, the one who remembers birthdays, who slips you extra cash at Eid, who actually listens when you talk about your dreams. I answered with a smile, expecting the usual jokes or maybe some advice about my new job. But instead, after a few minutes of small talk, he asked, "So, did you like the watch I sent you for your interview? I picked it out myself, thought it would bring you luck." For a second, I thought I'd misheard him. "The watch?" I repeated, my mind racing. All I'd received from my parents that day was a cheap plastic pen, handed to me with a half-hearted smile and a story about how my uncle had bought it for luck. There was no watch. There had never been a watch. I felt my stomach drop, a cold wave of confusion and suspicion washing over me. I tried to keep my voice steady as I replied, "Oh, the watch? I haven't seen it yet. Maybe it's still in the mail?" But even as I said it, I knew something was wrong. My uncle sounded surprised, almost hurt. "Really? I gave it to your parents weeks ago. They promised they'd give it to you before your big day." The silence that followed was heavy, filled with questions I was suddenly afraid to ask. Why would my parents lie? What else had they kept from me? In that moment, the trust I'd always taken for granted began to crack, and a new, unsettling truth started to take shape. What I discovered next would change everything I thought I knew about my family, and force me to choose between loyalty and honesty in a way I never expected. My name is Samira, and I'm 25 years old. I grew up in a small, close-knit family, just my parents, my uncle, and me. My parents have always been practical, hardworking people. They believe in saving every penny, planning for the future, and never taking unnecessary risks. My uncle, on the other hand, is the dreamer of the family. He's the one who encouraged me to think big, to believe in myself, and to chase after opportunities, even when they seemed out of reach. Growing up, I always wanted my family to be proud. I studied hard, got good grades, and tried to be the kind of daughter my parents could brag about to their friends. But deep down, I always felt like I was walking a tightrope, trying to balance my own hopes with their expectations. My uncle was my biggest cheerleader. He was the one who celebrated my little victories, who told me stories about his own struggles, and who made me believe that I could do something special with my life. When I finally landed my first job interview, it felt like everything was falling into place. I was excited, nervous, and desperate for my family's support. I wanted them to see how hard I'd worked, to be proud of the person I was becoming. The night before the interview, my parents handed me a small wrapped package. Inside was a cheap plastic pen. "Your uncle bought this for you," my mother said, her voice flat. "He said it's for luck." I smiled and thanked them, trying to ignore the disappointment that crept in. I told myself it was the thought that counted, that maybe the pen really would bring me luck. But now, looking back, I can't help but wonder if I was just trying to convince myself that everything was okay, that my parents were really on my side, that they would never hide anything from me. Have you ever felt that way? Like you wanted so badly to trust someone, only to find out they weren't being honest with you? Or maybe you've had a family member keep a secret that changed everything. If you have, you'll understand why what happened next shook me to my core. Looking back, I realized the signs were always there. Little moments that, at the time, I brushed aside as normal family quirks. My parents were never unkind, but they were practical, to a fault. Birthdays and celebrations in our house were always modest. While my friends would get the latest gadgets or trendy clothes, I'd unwrap a new set of notebooks, a sturdy backpack, or a pair of shoes you'll need for school. My parents would smile, reminding me, it's important to be sensible, Samira. These things will last. I learned early on to say thank you, to be grateful for whatever I received, and to never ask for more. But deep down, I longed for something different. A sign that my parents saw me, not just as a responsibility, but as someone worth celebrating. I wanted them to be proud, to see my achievements as more than just boxes to tick on the way to adulthood. My uncle, on the other hand, was a breath of fresh air. He'd show up at family gatherings with a mischievous grin and a new story to tell. He was the one who slipped me a sketchbook when he noticed me doodling on the corners of my homework, or who brought me a novel he thought I'd love, just because. He never made a big deal out of it, but his gifts always felt personal, like he actually saw me. Family gatherings were a study in contrasts. My parents would sit with the other adults discussing bills, work, and the rising cost of groceries. My uncle would pull me aside, asking about my dreams, my favorite books, or what I wanted to do after graduation. He'd listen, really listen, and then tell me, "Don't let anyone make you feel small, Samira. You're meant for big things." But even in those moments, there was an undercurrent I didn't fully understand. Sometimes my parents would exchange glances when my uncle praised me, or my mother would sigh and say, "You spoil her too much." I'd laugh it off, but the words stung. It was as if being seen, being celebrated, was something I didn't quite deserve. There were other moments, too, subtle but telling. Like the time my uncle gave me a beautiful set of colored pencils for my 12th birthday, and my mother quietly put them away, saying, "You should focus on your studies, not waste time drawing." Or the year he sent me a card with a little money tucked inside, and my father insisted it should go straight into my savings account for emergencies. I never saw that card again. As I got older, I started to notice a pattern. My parents' gifts were always practical, always just enough. My uncle's gifts were thoughtful, sometimes even extravagant by our family standards. But more than once, I'd hear about a present he'd sent, a book, a necklace, a ticket to a show, only to realize I'd never actually received it. When I asked my parents, they'd shrug and say it must have gotten lost or that my uncle was just confused. At first, I believed them. Why would my parents lie? But as the years went by, the cracks in my trust began to show. I started to wonder if maybe, just maybe, there was more to the story. Maybe my parents weren't just practical, they were holding something back. Still, I tried to push those doubts aside. I wanted to believe the best in them, to think that any misunderstandings were just that, misunderstandings. But the longing for genuine support, for someone to be truly in my corner, never went away. And now, with my uncle's question about the watch echoing in my mind, I couldn't help but wonder, was this just another lost gift, or was there something deeper going on? This wasn't the first time something felt off. I just never expected it would lead to a secret that would change everything. The morning of my first job interview felt like the start of a new chapter. I woke up before dawn, my heart pounding with a mix of excitement and anxiety. I'd spent days preparing, researching the company, practicing answers in front of the mirror, even laying out my clothes the night before. I wanted everything to be perfect, not just for me, but for my parents. I wanted them to see that all their sacrifices, all their lectures about hard work and responsibility had paid off. As I came into the kitchen, my parents were already waiting. My mother had made my favorite breakfast, parathas and chai, and my father sat at the table reading the newspaper, but glancing up every few seconds. There was a strange energy in the air, a tension I couldn't quite place. After breakfast, just as I was about to leave, my mother handed me a small, neatly wrapped package. "Your uncle bought this for you," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "He said it's for luck. You should use it today." I unwrapped the package to find a cheap plastic pen, blue, with a faded logo on the side. I tried to hide my disappointment, forcing a smile as I thanked them. My father patted my shoulder. It's not about the pen, Samira. It's about the thought. Remember, luck comes from hard work. I nodded, tucking the pen into my bag. I told myself it didn't matter, that I was lucky to have anything at all. But deep down, I wished for something more. A sign that my family truly believed in me, that they were as invested in my future as I was. The bus ride to the interview was a blur. I kept reaching into my bag, feeling the pen between my fingers, letting it ground me. It became my talisman, a small comfort in a sea of nerves. I thought about my uncle, about how he always seemed to know what I needed, and wondered if he'd really picked out the pen himself. The interview itself was a whirlwind. Questions, handshakes, polite smiles. I did my best, trying to project confidence, even as my hands trembled. When it was over, I sat on a bench outside, clutching the pen, replaying every moment in my mind. I had no idea then that this simple plastic pen would become a symbol of something much bigger, a secret that would unravel everything I thought I knew about my family and force me to confront the truth behind their carefully constructed facade. The days after my interview stretched on endlessly, each one filled with a nervous energy that made it hard to focus on anything else. I checked my email obsessively, waiting for news, and every time my phone buzzed, my heart leapt into my throat. My parents tried to act supportive, but there was a strange distance in their words, as if they were waiting for something too, but not necessarily the same thing I was. At dinner, I'd share updates about the interview process, hoping for encouragement. They said they'd get back to me by next week, I'd say, searching their faces for pride or excitement. My mother would nod, distracted, and my father would offer a generic, "That's good, Samira. Just keep working hard." It was the same advice I'd heard my whole life, but now it felt hollow, as if they were reciting lines from a script. One evening, as I was clearing the table, I overheard my parents talking in low voices in the living room. I paused in the hallway, straining to catch their words. "She's going to ask about it eventually," my mother whispered. My father sighed. "We'll just say it got lost. There's no need to make a big deal out of it." I froze, my mind racing. What were they talking about? Was it about me? About the job? Or was it something else entirely? I wanted to burst into the room and demand answers, but I held back, afraid of what I might hear. A few days later, a package arrived at the house. I saw the delivery man hand it to my father, who quickly tucked it under his arm and disappeared into his study. When I asked about it later, he brushed me off. "Just some paperwork for work," he said, not meeting my eyes. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The oddities kept piling up. My mother seemed more anxious than usual, jumping whenever the phone rang. Once I caught her deleting a message from my uncle before I could see it. When I asked if he'd called, she shrugged. "Just checking in. He wanted to know how your interview went." I started to feel like a stranger in my own home, tiptoeing around conversations, second-guessing every interaction. The pen, which I'd kept in my bag as a good-luck charm, now felt like a weight, a constant reminder that something wasn't right. One afternoon, I decided to call my uncle, myself. I wanted to thank him for the gift, to hear his voice and maybe get some clarity. But when I mentioned the gift, he sounded confused. "Pen? I didn't send you a pen, Samira. I gave your parents a watch for you, a nice one for your first big interview. Didn't they give it to you?" My heart sank. I tried to laugh it off, but my mind was spinning. Why would my parents lie about something so small? Or was it small? What else had they kept from me over the years? That night, I confronted my parents at dinner. Uncle called today. He said he asked if I liked the watch he sent. My mother's fork clattered onto her plate. My father's face went pale. For a moment, no one spoke. "Oh, that," my mother said finally, forcing a smile. "It must have gotten lost in the mail. You know how unreliable the post can be." I stared at them, searching for any sign of the truth. He said he gave it to you directly, weeks ago." My father cleared his throat. We never saw any watch, Samira. Maybe he's confused. He's getting older, you know. But I could see the guilt in their eyes, the way they avoided my gaze. The tension in the room was suffocating. I pushed my chair back and left the table, my appetite gone. Over the next few days, the atmosphere at home grew even more strained. My parents avoided me, speaking only when necessary. I found myself replaying every memory, every lost gift, every time they'd brushed off my uncle's kindness. The cracks in my trust widened, and I started to wonder if I'd ever really known my parents at all. Have you ever felt like you were being lied to by someone you love? Like the people you trust most are hiding something from you, and you're the only one who can see it? It's a lonely, confusing feeling, one that makes you question everything you thought you knew. I knew I couldn't ignore it any longer. I had to find the truth no matter what it cost. And deep down, I feared that what I'd discover would change my family forever. Just when I thought I could let it go, that maybe I was overthinking things, my uncle called again. His voice was warm as always, but there was a hint of concern I hadn't noticed before. After a few minutes of catching up, he asked, "So, Samira, how's the watch working out? I picked it especially for you. I hope it brought you luck at your interview." I felt my breath catch in my throat. The watch. There it was again. The gift I'd never seen. The one my parents insisted never existed. I hesitated, not wanting to worry him, but I couldn't bring myself to lie. "Actually, Uncle, I never got a watch. Mom and Dad gave me a pen and said it was from you." There was a long pause on the other end. "A pen?" "No, I gave them the watch in person. I even had it engraved with your initials. Are you sure you didn't get it?" My heart pounded as I tried to make sense of it. "No, I'm sure. I never saw it." He sighed, disappointment clear in his voice. "That's strange. I'll talk to them." After we hung up, I sat on my bed, replaying the conversation over and over. Why would my parents lie about something like this? Was it really just a mistake, or was there something more? I decided I couldn't ignore it any longer. That evening, I confronted my parents again. "Uncle called. He said he gave you the watch himself. He even had it engraved for me." My mother's face tightened. "Samira, we told you we never saw any watch. Maybe he's confused. He's getting older, you know." My father chimed in. "Or maybe it got lost. The house has been a mess lately." But their words felt rehearsed, and their eyes started away from mine. I remembered another time, years ago, when I'd been promised something special, a trip to the art museum with my class. My parents said they'd pay for it, but when the day came, they claimed they'd never agreed. I'd watched my friends board the bus, waving goodbye, while I stood on the sidewalk, trying not to cry. That feeling of being left out, of being denied something everyone else seemed to get so easily, came rushing back. I realized this wasn't just about a watch. It was about trust, about all the little ways I'd been made to feel small or unimportant. My parents' excuses sounded hollow, and I could feel the distance between us growing. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, determined to get to the bottom of it. I decided to search the house, to look for any sign of the missing watch. I needed answers. Not just for myself, but for the little girl who always wondered if she was truly valued. I waited until my parents had gone to bed before I started searching. My heart pounded in my chest as I moved quietly through the house, careful not to make a sound. I started in the living room, checking drawers and cabinets, but found nothing out of the ordinary. Next, I moved to my parents' bedroom, feeling a pang of guilt as I opened their closet and sifted through boxes on the top shelf. I almost gave up, but then, tucked behind a stack of old photo albums, I found a small velvet box. My hand shook as I opened it. Inside was a beautiful silver watch, the kind I'd always admired but never owned. I turned it over, and there, engraved on the back, were my initials. My breath caught in my throat. This was it. The watch my uncle had chosen for me, the one I was never meant to see? I stood there for a long moment, staring at the watch, anger and sadness swirling inside me. Why would my parents hide this from me? What else had they kept from me over the years? I walked back to the kitchen, the box clutched tightly in my hand. I didn't care that it was late. I needed answers. I flicked on the light, and the sudden brightness woke my parents. They came out, bleary-eyed and confused, but when they saw the watch in my hand, their faces fell. "Why?" I demanded, my voice trembling. "Why didn't you just give it to me? Why did you lie?" My mother's eyes filled with tears. My father looked away, unable to meet my gaze. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence was heavy, suffocating. Finally, my mother spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "We thought you didn't need it, Samira. You were already so focused, so determined. We were afraid that if you started getting gifts like that, you'd forget where you came from, that you'd forget us." My father nodded, his voice rough. "We didn't want you to get distracted. We wanted you to stay grounded, to remember that success isn't about things. It's about hard work." I shook my head, tears stinging my eyes. But it wasn't about the watch. It was about trust, about knowing that you believed in me, that you wanted me to succeed. Instead, you made me feel like I wasn't worth celebrating, like I had to earn your love. My mother reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "We're sorry, Samira," she said, her voice breaking. "We never meant to hurt you. We didn't know how to let go." I stared at them, searching their faces for the parents I thought I knew. "Why didn't you just tell me the truth?" I asked, my voice raw. My father sighed, his shoulders slumping. "We were scared, Samira. Scared that if you started to succeed, you'd leave us behind, that you'd become someone we didn't recognize." The room was filled with pain and regret. Years of unspoken fears and misunderstandings finally coming to the surface. I realized then that my parents weren't just trying to control me, they were afraid of losing me. But their fear had cost us something precious: trust. "I never wanted to leave you behind," I said quietly. "I just wanted you to be proud of me, to support me the way Uncle always did." My mother sobbed, covering her face with her hands. My father wiped his eyes, his voice trembling. "We are proud of you, Samira. We always have been. We didn't know how to show it." The confrontation left us all exhausted, but for the first time, everything was out in the open. There were no more secrets, no more lies, just the raw, messy truth of a family trying to find its way back to each other. But as I stood there, watch in hand, I knew things could never go back to the way they were. The trust that had been broken would take time to rebuild, if it could be rebuilt at all. What happens next, I realized, would determine whether I could ever truly trust my family again, or if this was the moment that changed us forever. The days that followed felt like moving through a fog. The house was quieter than ever. Every conversation clipped and awkward. My parents tried to go about their routines as if nothing had happened, but the tension was impossible to ignore. I avoided them as much as I could, spending long hours in my room or taking walks just to clear my head. Every time I looked at the watch, now resting on my desk, I felt a fresh wave of anger and sadness. Meals became silent affairs. My mother would set the table and call me to eat, but I'd barely touch my food. My father would clear his throat as if he wanted to say something, but the words never came. The air was thick with regret and things left unsaid. I could see the pain in their eyes, but I wasn't ready to forgive. Not yet. I called my uncle and told him the truth. He was quiet for a long time, then sighed deeply. "I'm so sorry, Samira.
I never wanted to come between you and your parents. I just wanted you to know how proud I am of you." His disappointment hurt almost as much as my own. I could hear the sadness in his voice, the sense of betrayal that he too had been kept in the dark. I started spending more time away from home, staying late at the library or meeting friends after work. The distance felt necessary, like I needed space to breathe, to figure out who I was without the constant pressure of my parents' expectations. I even considered moving out, looking at small apartments online and imagining what it would be like to have a place of my own, a space where I could finally feel safe and honest. My parents tried to reach out in small ways. My mother left notes on my door. "We love you. We're sorry." My father offered to help me with my job applications, but I turned him down. I wasn't ready to let them back in. The wound was still too fresh. My uncle checked in often, offering support and encouragement. He reminded me that family isn't just about blood. It's about trust, respect, and honesty. His words helped, but the pain lingered. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you love? Do you think some betrayals are too big to forgive, or is it possible to rebuild trust after it's been broken? Let me know in the comments. I'm still trying to figure out the answer myself.
The weeks after the confrontation passed in a blur of awkward silences and cautious attempts at conversation. My parents tried, in their own way, to make amends. My mother started leaving small treats outside my door, my favorite snacks, a cup of tea, a note that simply said, "Thinking of you." My father offered to drive me to work or pick me up from the library, but I usually declined. I needed space, and I think deep down, they understood. Despite their efforts, the rift between us didn't heal overnight. Some days I felt hopeful when I saw my parents trying to change, but other days, the memory of their betrayal would hit me all over again. I realized that forgiveness wasn't a single moment. It was a process, and some wounds would take longer to close than others. My uncle became my anchor during this time. We talked more than ever, sometimes meeting for coffee or just taking long walks in the park. He listened without judgment, never pushing me to forgive or forget, but always reminding me that I was loved and valued. He shared stories from his own life, times he'd been let down, how he learned to set boundaries and protect his own heart. His honesty helped me see that it was okay to be hurt and that healing didn't mean pretending nothing had happened. I started to rebuild my life on my own terms. I focused on my new job, poured myself into my work, and found comfort in the routines I created for myself. I made new friends, joined a book club, and even started saving for my own apartment. For the first time, I felt a sense of independence that was both terrifying and exhilarating. My relationship with my parents changed too. I learned to set boundaries, to say no when I needed to speak up when something felt wrong. I stopped seeking their approval for every decision and instead started trusting my own instincts. There were still moments of tension, but there were also small breakthroughs. A genuine conversation over dinner, a shared laugh at an old family photo, a quiet moment of understanding. But not everything went back to the way it was. Some wounds lingered, and there were days when the distance between us felt insurmountable. I realized that trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild, and sometimes it never fully returns. But I also learned that I didn't have to carry the weight of my family's mistakes forever. I could choose to move forward, to build a life that felt true to me. One evening, a few months after everything had come to light, my parents surprised me. They invited my uncle and me over for dinner. The atmosphere was tense at first, but as the night went on, something shifted. After dessert, my father stood up and handed me a small box. Inside was a new watch, simple, elegant, and engraved with my initials. My mother smiled through tears. "Samira, we know we can't change the past, but we want to try to do better. We want you to know how proud we are of you." It wasn't a perfect ending, and it didn't erase the pain of what had happened,
But it was a start, a gesture that showed real growth and a willingness to move forward together. Sometimes closure doesn't come in the way you expect. Sometimes it's not about forgetting the hurt, but about finding the strength to forgive, to set boundaries, and to let yourself heal. And sometimes the people who hurt you the most are the ones who surprise you in the end. But there was still one more surprise waiting for me, a final gesture that would show just how much things had changed. A few weeks after that dinner, my parents sat me down in the living room. There was no pretense this time, no awkward small talk, just honesty. My mother took my hand and looked me in the eyes, her voice trembling. "Samira, we're truly sorry. We let our fears and pride get in the way of loving you the way you deserved. We can't take back what we did, but we want to earn your trust again, no matter how long it takes." My father nodded, his own eyes shining with emotion. "We're proud of you, not just for your job or your achievements, but for the person you are. We hope you can forgive us, but we understand if you need more time." Their words didn't erase the past, but they did something important. They acknowledged it. For the first time, I felt seen and heard, not just as their daughter, but as an adult with her own feelings and boundaries. My uncle, ever the quiet supporter, gave me a small, wrapped box after that conversation. Inside was a delicate bracelet with a tiny charm shaped like a key. "For your new apartment, when you're ready," he said with a smile. "A reminder that you hold the key to your own happiness." Reflecting on everything, I realized that trust is fragile, and sometimes the people we love the most are the ones who hurt us the deepest. But I also learned that standing up for yourself, even when it's hard, even when it means facing uncomfortable truths, is the only way to truly grow. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting, it's about letting go of the pain so you can move forward. If you're watching this and you've ever felt betrayed by someone you love or struggled to find your own voice in your family, know that you're not alone. Healing takes time, and it's okay to set boundaries and demand respect. Your story matters, and your happiness is worth fighting for. Have you ever uncovered a family secret or had to stand up for yourself, even when it was difficult? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear how you found your strength.
Thank you so much for listening to my story. I know family can be complicated, and sometimes the people we trust the most are the ones who surprise us the most, both in good ways and bad. If you've ever felt betrayed, misunderstood, or had to fight for your own happiness, I hope my journey reminds you that you're not alone and that healing is possible, even if it takes time. If this story resonated with you, please give it a thumbs up and share your thoughts or experiences in the comments below. I love reading your stories and connecting with others who have faced similar challenges. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new video. Your support means the world to me and helps this community grow. And if you thought this story was shocking, just wait until you hear what happened when I discovered my best friend's secret. That's coming up in my next video, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. Until then, take care of yourself, keep believing in your worth, and remember, sometimes the biggest plot twists in life lead to the most powerful growth. See you in the next story.